President kicking off the second week of his second term in Florida. House Republicans are there for a three-day retreat at Trump's Doral Golf Resort in Miami. And while there, lawmakers are expected to touch on the White House's border, energy, and tax plans, trying to hammer out all that out. Trump spoke a while ago, just a little bit ago, at the 2025 House Republican Members Conference dinner, and he energized his party, and he touted his election victory.
But over the past 7 days, my administration has been moving with urgency and historic speed to reverse every single disaster of the Biden administration. And as I said in my inaugural address, the American decline is over. It's over. The golden age of America has officially begun.
Okay, that's the president speaking today in Florida. And this multi-day strategy session that the Republicans down there are holding, it's thought to be pivotal to pushing the president's agenda forward. How? That's the big question. Meantime, the U.S. and Colombia have reached a deal over deportation flights and tariffs after a tense standoff that could have raised prices on imports to the U.S., like coffee and fresh flowers that come from Colombia. President Trump implemented a 25% tariff on Colombian imports after Colombia's president refused to accept 2 deportation flights from the U.S. and defied Trump publicly on social media. Well, he later backed off of his threats, and now Colombia is sending a representative to meet with Trump officials. But the White House says tariffs are still on the table if the agreement tentatively reached over the weekend was not honored. So let's bring in ABC News White House correspondent Marilyn S. Parks and ABC News' Jay O'Brien from Miami, where that retreat is happening. Jay, President Trump, what stood out to you? What is standing out to you about the president's remarks?
Yeah, Terry, one of the things I've heard repeatedly from House Republicans is they do want an answer from President Trump on exactly how he wants that legislative package to be put together. They want him to essentially call the play, because this is a laundry list of Donald Trump's campaign promises from the trail: tax cuts, energy policy, but also in there a looming government shutdown deadline in mid-March. Congress also has to raise the debt ceiling by spring, if not early summer. They would likely need Democratic votes to do that, because there's this contingent of far-right Republicans, we've seen them time and time again, who do not want to vote for any kind of raising of the debt ceiling. And so what Republicans want from President Trump is they want him to give them some kind of playbook as to how they navigate that, how they raise the debt ceiling with those Democratic votes, but also pass his ambitious legislative agenda. Does he want it all put into one, quote-unquote, big, beautiful bill, as House Republican leadership and Donald Trump have said in the past? Is he okay with the Senate's plan, which is to break it up into 2 different bills? So far, we've seen House Republican leadership obviously favor and put forward that one bill approach, trying to put all of Donald Trump's promises into one piece of legislation, get it through a deeply divided House with a slim Republican majority of just a few seats in that chamber, and try to pass it through the Senate. But one of the things we haven't heard from Donald Trump in these remarks is exactly what he wants done, and that seems to be calculated. He's ceding control of this, at least right now, to Mike Johnson, for it to be Mike Johnson's job to call the play and really carry the water, and it to be on Mike Johnson to get all this through Congress, Terry.
Right, well, thank you, Jay. Mike Johnson is the legislator, Mary Alice. Donald Trump is not. Who was it? I guess it was Otto von Bismarck, the German chancellor, who said you should never watch 2 things being made: sausage and legislation. And it does feel like that's a little bit of Trump's approach. He doesn't really want to get his hands in that mess.
Until he does. I mean, we've seen in the past when Trump weighs in at the 11th hour. I think a lot of people in Washington are worried about Speaker Johnson's ability to get this done when they have to guess at what Trump may or may not back. I mean, we have seen multiple times when Republicans have thought they had a deal. I'm thinking about before the holiday, when it wasn't even Trump that blew up a deal. It was Elon Musk that blew up a deal. So this is really tricky work for Speaker Johnson to not only bring a conference together, deal with those slim margins Jay was talking about, work on a legislative agenda, keep the government funded, but anticipate what Trump may or may not like in the end. Tricky work going forward. And it was notable, though, that Trump also wants a lot of praise for the work he's just been able to do by executive order, blowing past the fact that some of these executive orders have already been stopped in the courts, others already challenged. He spent a lot of his remarks talking about what he has been able to do so far, just with the stroke of a pen, what he is hoping to get done singularly alone there from the White House through executive actions.
All right. And Jay, let me come back to you on, and you spoke about it, the narrow margins that Republicans have to work with in both houses of Congress, especially in the House of Representatives at this time, given how many nominees to Trump's cabinet were serving in the House, and that pressure that does put on Mike Johnson, Speaker Mike Johnson, to find a way to do these big things Trump is promising with that small majority.
Yeah, and largely with the help of Donald Trump and drawing out his base voters, Republicans have a pretty decent majority in the Senate. They have a 53-seat majority, so they have the votes there to get Donald Trump's legislative agenda through that chamber. But it's in the House where things get very tricky, and that's because, at least right now, Mike Johnson has a 218 to 215 House majority. Now, that's going to grow by a few seats once they have these special elections in states like Florida, where members have resigned in order to join Trump's cabinet. Matt Gaetz is a good example, but also Mike Waltz, who's now the national security advisor for Donald Trump. That majority, though, until those special elections happen, is actually going to shrink even more because Elise Stefanik is on track to be confirmed as the next UN ambassador, so she's going to have to resign. So Mike Johnson, at least for the next few weeks and months, is going to be playing with a 217 to 215 House majority, just 2 seats. That is razor thin. That is tough legislative math if you are Mike Johnson. So you can't afford to lose Republicans on your right flank who want to see deep spending cuts, who want to see certain spending policies enacted with offsets. They want to see significant changes to the federal government's apparatus. As John Kakko said early on in the broadcast, some of them want to see cuts to entitlements, although GOP leadership has been clear they don't want to see cuts to entitlements like Social Security and Medicare. So it's up to Mike Johnson on how to make this sausage make everybody happy. He's going to be turning for Donald Trump, or turning to Donald Trump, for the legislative oomph to get that done. And what we don't know at this hour is how much air cover is Donald Trump going to give Mike Johnson as Johnson is making some of these hard decisions on Trump's legislative agenda.
Yeah, it's a hard enough job as is, but as you point out, Jay, keep nominating members of the House, you're shrinking that majority, at least for a time. So Jay and Mary Alice, thanks very much.